Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. The topic of the day is the college football playoff, and oh my goodness, what a weekend it was, right? It was kind of funny because when I was preparing for the show, thinking about the show, I was thinking about how we went into the weekend thinking a certain thing, and that thing was very simply this. Alabama, when they're in, when they're the number one seed, no debate. If they lose, we'll have that conversation. We don't think they're going to lose. Then it was Clemson. Well, they lost to Notre Dame, but they're not going to really lose to Notre Dame the second time, so they're going to get in at number 2. Ohio State, we hate the 6-game schedule, but they'll get in at number 3. And then Notre Dame, as long as they just don't get blown out, they're going to get the 4th spot. And Texas A&M needs something crazy to happen. They need Ohio State to lose. They need, who knows, Clemson to lose, maybe Notre Dame to get blown out. Then maybe Texas A&M is in the conversation. And while I personally believe Cincinnati should have been taken more seriously, I think we all knew Cincinnati wasn't really a factor. I think we all knew Iowa State and Oklahoma in the Big 12 weren't a factor. USC came into the weekend undefeated. They would not be a factor. But basically, it was kind of like we kind of already know, okay, unless something crazy happens, it's going to be Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and Notre Dame in that order. So we get to Saturday night, and what happens? Notre Dame gets blown out, 24 points. And so early in Saturday, when Ohio State struggled, I think part of the conversation was, do we really take a 6-0 Ohio State team who stunk in their final game, or do we take Texas A&M? And by the end of the night, it was Notre Dame versus Texas A&M. And we all kind of know what the resumes were for both teams. Notre Dame, of course, did have the great head-to-head win over Clemson. They went 10-1 on the season, but the game against Clemson was also marred a little bit, a lot of it, because of the fact that Trevor Lawrence did not play in the first game. He came back in the second game, showed that whoever wins the Heisman Trophy, Trevor Lawrence is the best player in college football this year. And so Notre Dame's just resume all of a sudden doesn't look as impressive as it did 12 hours ago because you see the factor and the difference that Trevor Lawrence has. And then, of course, Texas A&M, we kind of know what their resume was too, right? 8-1 overall, 7 straight wins in the vaunted SEC. They did get smoked by Alabama, but that was early in the season. It was at Alabama. They bounced back nicely. They beat Florida. And so those were the two teams, and that was the story going into Sunday morning. And before I reveal, not only who got the spot, but let me just say really quickly, this was the weird one that I don't know that I really had a super strong opinion about, right? Like you guys listen to this show and you kind of know my reputation and people say, oh, Torres, he's full of hot takes. All he ever does is have hot takes. And I'm a very opinionated person. I think opinion comes from research and homework. But there are some times in life that I just don't feel strongly about either one. And so it was funny as I was preparing to do my radio show on Saturday night, as I was preparing to watch the championship preview show, the Final Four show on Sunday, this was the weird one that I had no strong opinion on. I felt like both teams had good resumes, but they also had some real holes in their resume. And I didn't feel as though I was super passionate that one needed to be in over the other, that one absolutely deserved to be in over the other. And I can't say that I had a strong opinion. Years past, I have. I mean, you guys probably still remember. The reason I still crush Kirby Smart to this day is because of the year when Kirby Smart and Georgia lost in the SEC championship game, and they basically built their entire we should be in the playoff resume on a close loss to Alabama. Don't know if you guys remember that, but that was the year that I was like, no, this is ridiculous. Don't put that team in. Put Oklahoma in. That was the year Oklahoma had Kyler Murray. It ended up happening that way. But there have been times where I'm very passionate that one side absolutely deserves to be in, one side doesn't. Now, I did have an opinion, and that opinion was, sorry, Texas A&M fans, sorry, SEC fans, but Notre Dame does deserve to be in. And obviously, that's exactly what happened. Notre Dame got the 4th spot, and I am just here to say that very simply, I agree with the committee. And again, First of all, before we go any further, let me just say, we got a lot of A&M fans who listen to the show. You guys DM me. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate your support. This is not to tear down A&M. sometimes in sports, like to build up an argument on something, you want to tear down somebody else, and that's not what I'm going to do here. What I'm going to do here is say this. Texas A&M is awesome. I am so impressed by what Jimbo Fisher has done in a short amount of time in Aggieland. He won 9 games his first year. Last year he goes 8-5, and I think if you look at the schedule, you say, well, he won 8-5. What are you paying him all this money for? And it's like, well, he lost to LSU, which won the national championship. He lost to Clemson, which was the national runner-up in an out-of-conference game, and they played Bama and Georgia, which were basically 4 of their losses were to like top 5 teams. So I was really impressed, and I remain really impressed by what Jimbo Fisher has done at Texas A&M. When I say that I believe that Notre Dame deserved the 4th spot, it is not in an attempt to tear down what A&M did this year. But I also think that if you take away the emotion of what you just saw on Saturday afternoon, and you look at the full body of work, and you do what we're supposed to do, which is take the season in totality and not one small snapshot of Saturday, I think the committee got it right. And I know people are fired up because, but they got destroyed by Notre Dame, by Clemson. Clemson destroyed Notre Dame. It's not the same. It's completely different. That first losses were completely irrelevant. I get it. But let's just, again, take away the emotion of what we just saw, and let's look at the totality of the resumes. Because I think if you're unbiased, now if you're an A&M fan, you're just not going to agree with me, and I get that. And it sucks, and I wish you did, but I get it. If you're just going to disagree with me, you're going to disagree with me. But I think if you look at the totality of the season, if you look at the whole body of work, I think you'll see Notre Dame's the better team. And ultimately, that's the committee's job. It's to pick the 4 most deserving teams. You can't pick the 4 best teams because nobody knows who the best is. Best team in the country, for all we know, might be Oklahoma right now. I don't think they are, but I actually think it's Alabama or Clemson. I don't think there's even a debate. But there's no way to know best, so you have to do most deserving, and you have to base both best and deserving on actual tangible things. And so let's get into the actual resumes. Notre Dame, first of all, 10-0 regular season, 10-1 overall. A&M 8-1. Now they had 1 game canceled. They would have played Ole Miss, but just straight up wins advantage Notre Dame. Notre Dame, I know they got smoked by Clemson. They did win the ACC regular season title. Texas A&M, did not win their conference. They did not win their division. Now they had the best team in the country in their division. I get it, but we're trying to compare resumes here. Notre Dame, more head-to-head wins, more wins overall, won the conference. Oh, by the way, Notre Dame also had more wins against ranked opponents. They had 2. They beat Clemson early in the season. I know it was without Trevor Lawrence. And they beat North Carolina, which finished 8-3 and number 13 in the country. A&M had 1. They beat Florida 7 weeks ago, who finished with 3 losses. And then finally, if you want to break down even further, you have just wins against teams that finished with winning records. Notre Dame finished with 5, I believe. Texas A&M had 2. Those 2 wins were Florida and Auburn. And so if you look at the totality of Texas A&M's resume, this is what their resume is. Well, it's 7 straight wins in the SEC. Yeah, that's great. But look at who they played. The totality of their resume was a win over a 3-loss Florida team, which, by the way, they won it at the end of regulation, last play of the game on a field goal. They didn't blow them out. They didn't destroy them. Won it with a last-second field goal. And then their second-best win was to an Auburn team who just fired their coach. And along the way, they did win 7 games. But they also, through no fault of their own, I'm not blaming Texas A&M, they played a pretty soft schedule, okay? When you look at the games that were crossover games from the SEC East, yes, they beat Florida. But they also played Vandy, who finished in last place 0-10. They played South Carolina, who was second to last in the division in the SEC East, finished 2-8 overall. And they beat Tennessee Saturday, that went 3-7 and finished in third to last place in the SEC. And so I know we think that Texas A&M has this incredible resume because they won 7 in a row in the SEC. But they have 2 wins against teams that finished with winning records. They have 1 win over a team that finished ranked in the final poll. And they have wins over Vandy, Tennessee, South Carolina, Mississippi State, Arkansas. I mean, some really, really, really bad football teams. And so I think when you look at the totality of the season and the bigger body of work, I think Notre Dame's a deserving team. Now, I know what people would say from there, though. Well, yeah, they didn't beat anybody that good, but, I mean, they finished the season so much stronger than Notre Dame. I mean, did they really? Well, first of all, I watched the games, right? It's not just that I watched the Notre Dame game, Notre Dame get destroyed by Clemson. I watched A&M too. I watched them 3 weeks ago against LSU. They won 20-7 in a driving rainstorm. Now, it's not their fault it was raining, but they were sloppy. LSU was sloppy. They deserved to win, but they weren't dominant. Week later, they played Auburn. Great win. They trailed into the fourth quarter. It's a credit to them for winning the game, but they weren't dominant. Tennessee didn't dominate. Won. They weren't dominant. It was close going into the fourth quarter. And so this argument that Texas A&M's, oh, they're playing so much better. Are they really? And then on the flip side, what about Notre Dame? Notre Dame maybe just played the best team in college football, peaking at the perfect time with the healthiest that it's been since July in Clemson. I get that that Notre Dame just got smoked by Clemson. Would Texas A&M's resume not look different right now if they didn't have to play Alabama a second time on Saturday? So we're going to punish Notre Dame because they beat Clemson the first time, get to the ACC championship game, and lose to a vastly superior team when Texas A&M got to play on Saturday. They got to play Tennessee. And again, this isn't being critical of Tennessee or Texas A&M. It's just looking at both sides and trying to be fair. By the way, for all the Notre Dame, was disaster down the stretch, they beat UNC on Thanksgiving weekend. We'll see how good UNC is because they're actually playing Texas A&M in a bowl game. But like this idea that Texas A&M is playing so much better than Notre Dame, I don't buy it. And so what it really comes down to for me is this. It comes down to what I said a few minutes ago. I'm not super strong about either side. Now, I know you're sitting there saying, well, of course you're super strong. You're screaming and yelling that Notre Dame deserves it. I'm screaming and yelling because I believe it was the right decision. But if Texas A&M had gotten it, I wouldn't be coming on this show yelling and screaming, Texas A&M doesn't deserve to be in. Notre Dame got robbed. What I'm saying is both teams had flawed resumes, and I just feel like Notre Dame's resume was a little bit more convincing, though not great. But Texas A&M's was worse, right? I say it all the time. I talked about this the other day with the Kentucky-Kansas basketball game. I said neither team deserved to win, but Kansas deserved to lose best. And that's kind of how I feel with this Notre Dame versus Texas A&M situation. Both teams are really good, but both teams had flawed resumes. And I actually think that Notre Dame's resume is just a little bit less flawed. And again, I don't think I would be that fired up if Texas A&M got in over Notre Dame. Now, I would also add, by the way, I think there's a broader, more interesting conversation to be had about should we even be arguing over those two teams as opposed to just arguing over Ohio State? Because Ohio State only played 6 games. Ohio State only played 2 teams that finished ranked, and in both games they did win to their credit, but man, did they look sloppy. They did not look like a very good football team against Northwestern. And I think there's a very important conversation to be had about if you're going to play that many fewer games, you probably should be dominant to get in over a Texas A&M team that has been going since July, hasn't taken a break, start, stop, COVID, no COVID. But we also know that Ohio State was going to get in. So I think that's the real more interesting conversation. But as far as Notre Dame, Texas A&M is concerned, I do believe the committee got it right. I'm not super fired up. I'm not super upset that Texas A&M got robbed or anything like that. I think the committee didn't have a great choice, but they took the better of 2 choices that were not ideal. That's where I stand. You can disagree. I know we have a lot of SEC fans that are probably like, Torres, you don't know what you're talking about. The SEC is amazing. The SEC is amazing. It's a great football conference. There's no doubt in my mind. But the ACC was pretty good this year too, and the SEC was very top-heavy. Texas A&M lost to the best team they played, second best team they beat, the third best team in the conference they didn't play. And so I just can't get fired up and passionately defend Texas A&M when their whole resume was a win over a 3-loss Florida team and a win over Auburn, who fired their coach. You know what I can't get fired up